My name is Laura Bennett, 34, and I work as a data analyst in Chicago. After years of grinding, I've carved out a stable, comfortable life for myself. So, when I received a stack of loan documents in the mail for a condo I never purchased, I was baffled. Then came the shocking news from my parents. "We've decided you should cover your brother's loan payments." When I refused, they took me to court, demanding $420,000. What unfolded was a devastating ordeal that fractured my family and dragged us into a legal battle. Before I share how this chaos started, let me know where you're reading from. And if you want more stories about family financial disputes that could help you avoid a similar mess, consider subscribing. To grasp how things spiraled so disastrously with my family, you need some context about the Bennett family dynamics. I grew up in a working-class suburb of Ohio with my parents, Margaret and Thomas Bennett, and my younger brother Ethan, who's 3 years younger than me. From childhood, there was a clear disparity in how we were treated. I was the responsible one, expected to excel and stay on track, while Ethan was sheltered, indulged, and honestly, spoiled. If I brought home an A, my parents would ask why it wasn't an A+. If Ethan scraped by with a D, they'd throw a party for his effort and reward him with a new gadget. Our home wasn't overtly toxic, but those subtle imbalances stacked up, only becoming clear when I reflected as an adult. For example, I got a second-hand skateboard for my 15th birthday, while Ethan received a motorcycle for his. I worked after-school jobs to save for college, while Ethan's only task was to enjoy his youth. I was the first in our family to attend college, earning a partial scholarship to the University of Illinois. I took out loans for the rest and worked 25 hours a week at a campus bookstore to cover expenses. My parents contributed nothing, saying they were saving for Ethan's future. I didn't mind much then. I took pride in my independence. Ethan, meanwhile, attended 2 colleges over 4 years, never finishing a degree. My parents covered his tuition, paid for his off-campus housing, and gave him an allowance, no questions asked, even when he quit to explore his passions. By his mid-20s, they'd spent over $120,000 on his failed academic ventures, while I was still chipping away at my student loans. After graduating, I landed a junior role at a tech firm in Chicago. I shared a tiny apartment with 2 roommates, lived frugally, and funneled every extra cent toward my debt. It took 6 years and a couple of promotions to afford a small studio apartment. By 32, I'd cleared my loans, built a savings account, and started contributing to my retirement fund. I was proud of my financial independence. Ethan, on the other hand, drifted between short-term jobs, barista, delivery driver, office temp, never staying anywhere long. He lived rent-free in our parents' basement until he was 28. When he finally moved out, my parents co-signed his lease, covered his deposit, and bought him furniture as a new start gift. Throughout our 20s, my parents repeatedly leaned on me to bail Ethan out financially. When his scooter broke down, my mom called me saying, "You're so good with money, Laura. Can't you spare a few hundred for Ethan's repairs? He needs it for his job." Or when Ethan wanted to join friends on a trip but was short on cash, my dad suggested I gift him the money for Christmas, even if it was July. Each time, I felt a mix of frustration and duty. I'd often cave, convincing myself it was a one-off and that family supports family. But it was never just once. It became an unspoken rule that my success meant I should fund Ethan's lifestyle. Family dinners grew tense as I hit my 30s. If I mentioned a work achievement or a small stock investment, my mom would pivot to Ethan's struggles, how he couldn't cover rent or was overwhelmed by medical bills. The message was clear. My accomplishments obligated me to fix his problems. Last Easter was especially awkward. I'd just been promoted to lead data analyst, with a nice pay bump. I mentioned it when my cousin asked about work, and soon after, my dad pulled me aside to ask if I could help Ethan with a car loan. "He's buried in interest," he said. "With your new salary, it's nothing for you." I mumbled something about checking my finances, but as I left, I overheard my mom reassuring Ethan, "Don't worry. We'll sort it out with Laura. She doesn't get how tough things are for regular people." The irony stung, coming from someone who'd shielded Ethan from real-world consequences his whole life. Despite this, I still yearned for my family's approval. I wanted them to value the life I'd built through discipline and effort. I wanted them to see me as worthy of the same support they lavished on Ethan. That hope, naive as it was about to be crushed in the worst way possible. It was a quiet Wednesday in May, when I checked my mailbox after work. Amid the usual junk mail was a hefty envelope from Great Lakes Lending. Assuming it was spam, I nearly tossed it, but curiosity made me open it. Inside were loan documents for a condo at 512 Maple Lane in Evanston, Illinois, a pricey suburb near Chicago. My name was listed as the borrower for a $420,000 loan, with monthly payments of $2,600 for a 30-year mortgage. My signature, or what looked like it, was on multiple pages. I felt dizzy, like I'd stepped out of my own body. I'd never applied for this loan or seen this property. I called the lender, but it was after hours, so I left a frantic voicemail about possible fraud. That night, I barely slept, my mind racing with questions. The next morning, before I could follow up with the lender, my mom called. "Did you get the loan papers?" she asked, as if discussing a grocery list. "Mom, what's going on?" I demanded. "These documents have my name on a condo I know nothing about." "We need to talk about it," she said calmly. "Can you come to dinner tonight? Ethan's coming too." My stomach churned. "Mom, is this identity theft? Tell me now." "Don't be so dramatic, Laura," she sighed. "It's a family matter. We'll explain at 6:30. She hung up before I could argue. I took a sick day, a rarity for me, and spent the day in a haze of dread. That evening, I drove to my parents' house in Ohio, the same one I grew up in. Ethan's truck, a recent purchase my parents had co-signed, was in the driveway. Inside, they sat in the dining room, eerily composed. My mom offered me tea, which I ignored. My dad motioned to a chair, like I was at a business meeting, not a family gathering. "Laura," my dad began, "we know the loan documents are confusing, but we've been planning this for a while." "Planning what?" I asked, my voice tight. "Well," my mom said, "Ethan's been renting that expensive place in Wicker Park. With the market so crazy, we decided it's time he owned something." "Great," I said warily, "but why is my name on this?" My dad coughed. "We found a perfect condo in Evanston. Nice area, good for when he starts a family. But with Ethan's credit and job history, he couldn't qualify for the loan alone." A sick feeling settled in. "So you used my name, my credit, my income." My voice shook. "Don't overreact," my dad said firmly. "We've decided you should pay for this loan." I stared, speechless. "You've decided? Without my consent? "You're doing so well, Laura," my mom said, as if that justified it. "Ethan needs this condo. Family looks out for family." Ethan, silent until now, spoke up. "It's not a big deal, Laura. You're always bragging about your raises and investments." I was stunned. "I can barely keep up with my own bills because you've never held a job longer than a few weeks," I snapped, my voice breaking with anger. "And even if I could afford it, which I absolutely cannot without wrecking my own future, no one has the right to commit fraud in my name." "Fraud is a harsh word, Laura," my mother said, her lips tightening. "We're family." "How did you even do this?" I demanded. "How did you get my signature? My financial details?" My father shifted in his seat, avoiding my gaze. "We had some of your old bank statements from when you lived here," he mumbled. "And your mom. She's always been good at mimicking handwriting." I felt nauseous. "So you forged my signature on legal documents? Do you realize how illegal that is? This is identity theft. This is a crime." "Stop being so dramatic," Ethan scoffed. "We're not some crook scamming you. We're your family." "A family that thinks it's okay to steal my identity and stick me with nearly $500,000 in debt without my consent?" I was yelling now, my shock and fury boiling over. "Keep your voice down," my father barked. "The decision's final. The condo's been purchased. Ethan moves in next month." "No decision has been made," I shot back, standing up. "I didn't agree to this, and I'm not paying for a loan I didn't take out." "What are you saying?" my mother asked, her tone icy. "I'm saying no. Absolutely not. I won't pay a dime toward this loan, and tomorrow I'm reporting this as fraud to the police and the lender." The room went silent for a moment before chaos erupted. Ethan started sobbing, accusing me of sabotaging his future. My mother launched into a tirade about all the sacrifices they'd made for me, most of which were outright lies. My father warned he'd cut me off for good if I didn't step up for once in your selfish life. Step up? I laughed bitterly. The right thing would have been teaching Ethan to manage his own money instead of enabling his irresponsibility. The right thing would have been respecting me enough to ask before committing a felony in my name. I grabbed my bag and stormed toward the door. My mother followed, clutching my arm. "If you leave now, you're no longer part of this family," she hissed. I met her gaze. "If being family means letting you ruin my life and break the law, then maybe I don't want to be part of it." Driving back to Chicago that night, tears blurred my vision as I swung between rage, betrayal, and heartbreak. The family I'd spent my life trying to earn approval from had shown how little they valued me. To them, I wasn't a daughter. I was a resource to exploit. The next morning, I called my friend Sarah, a legal assistant at a firm specializing in financial disputes. I poured out the story, my voice still raw. "Laura, this is serious," Sarah said. "What your parents did is identity theft and loan fraud. These are federal offenses with hefty consequences." "I know," I said, my stomach churning. "But they're my parents. And it would crush Ethan if they faced jail time. I'm not saying you have to press charges right away, but you need to protect yourself legally and financially. This loan is in your name. If payments aren't made, your credit will take the hit, and your future will suffer." Sarah connected me with Emily Carter, an attorney at her firm who offered a free initial consultation. Emily was blunt. "First, we document everything," she said. "Then we formally notify the lender, the county records office. and possibly the police that this loan was taken out fraudulently without your consent. Will my parents go to jail? I asked, torn despite their actions. That depends on whether you pursue criminal charges, Emily explained. But either way, you need to legally distance yourself from this loan before payments start. Over the next few days, I gathered evidence. The forged documents, text messages from my parents admitting their scheme, and a detailed timeline. Emily helped me draft a certified letter to my parents, clearly stating I wouldn't take responsibility for the loan, was aware of the fraud, and would take all necessary legal steps to protect myself. 3 days after they would have received the letter, my father called. I let it go to voicemail. "Laura, this childish stunt has gone too far," his voice thundered. "Your mother's a wreck, and Ethan hasn't stopped crying. Grow up and take on your family duties. Call us now so we can fix this like adults." I didn't call back. Instead, I followed Emily's advice and sent formal notices to the lender and county records office, along with an affidavit declaring my signature was forged. That's when things escalated further. My parents started calling relentlessly, using different numbers to bypass my blocks. My mother showed up at my office, causing a scene in the reception area until security intervened. My father emailed my supervisor, claiming I was unstable and making false accusations against my family. Thankfully, my supervisor saw through the harassment and supported me. Ethan, meanwhile, launched a social media vendetta. He posted emotional videos claiming his successful sister was trying to leave him destitute out of jealousy. He shared doctored text exchanges that painted me as cruel. He even started a crowdfunding campaign called Betrayed by My Sister, raising thousands with a fabricated story. Extended family piled on. Aunts, uncles, and cousins I hadn't spoken to in years condemned my selfishness. Some sent long emails about family duty. Others just cut me off online without asking for my side. Only my paternal grandfather, George, reached out with kindness. "Laura, there's a lot of noise about you and your parents," he wrote. "I'm not picking sides, but I'm here if you need me. Love you." His message brought me to tears, the only genuine support from my family without strings attached. The lender's fraud team opened an investigation, but said it could take months to resolve. They wouldn't disclose potential actions against my parents due to the ongoing case. The stress seeped into every corner of my life. I couldn't sleep, haunted by nightmares of losing my home or being jailed for debts I didn't owe. My work suffered, prompting a worried check-in from my manager. I stopped attending my weekly book club, seeing friends, or doing much beyond work and obsessively checking for updates from Emily or the lender. Then came the ultimatum. My father left a voicemail that sent chills down my spine. "Laura, this is your last chance. Your mother and I have spoken to our lawyer. If you don't drop your fraud claims and take on Ethan's loan by Friday, we're suing you for the full value of the condo. You may think you're smart with your fancy Chicago attorney, but we have years of proof of verbal promises and family obligations that any court will uphold. Don't push us." I forwarded the voicemail to Emily, who called me immediately. "They're bluffing," she said. "Verbal promises and family obligations aren't legally enforceable for a $420,000 loan. No judge would entertain that. So I ignore it," I asked. "Not quite," Emily said. "If they file a lawsuit, even a baseless one, you'll need to respond. Defending yourself, even against nonsense, can be costly and draining. Keep documenting everything. And Laura, Given their harassment, you might consider a restraining order. A restraining order against my parents. The idea was so absurd, I let out a hollow laugh. But it quickly dissolved into sobs as the reality hit me. How had the people meant to protect me become the ones I needed protection from? 5 days later, I was served lawsuit papers at my apartment. My parents were suing me for $420,000, the full value of the condo they'd fraudulently bought in my name. Their complaint was a twisted blend of lies, claiming I'd verbally agreed to buy Ethan a home, backed out of a family commitment, and that they'd acted as my proxies in good faith. It was outrageous, infuriating, and terrifying. Even if their claims were flimsy, I was now entangled in a real lawsuit that could drain my savings, tarnish my reputation, and stretch on for years. That night, surrounded by legal documents on my living room floor, I hit rock bottom. I felt utterly isolated. The family I'd spent my life trying to please had not only betrayed me, but was now working to dismantle the independence I'd fought so hard to build. I'd worked tirelessly to build a life I was proud of. For a fleeting moment, I wondered if giving in, paying the loan, accepting the financial hit, and trying to patch things up with my family might be the easier path. But as the thought took shape, a wave of clarity cut through my despair. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about breaking free from years of manipulation and unfair treatment. It was about refusing to let the people who should have championed me exploit me instead. I grabbed my phone and called Emily. "They're suing me," I said when she picked up, "and I'm fighting this to the end." The lawsuit, officially titled Bennett and Bennett versus Bennett, was a cruel irony. A family turned against itself. The 40-page complaint was packed with baseless claims. Breach of an alleged verbal agreement, unjust enrichment, and something they called familial betrayal, which wasn't even a recognized legal term. Emily reviewed it and confirmed her suspicions. "It's a weak case meant to bully you into compliance," she said. "But weak or not, you have to respond within 20 days, or you risk a default judgment." "I can help with the initial response," Emily offered. "But for a case this messy, you need a litigation attorney who specializes in family financial disputes." The problem was, litigation attorneys were costly, far beyond what my modest salary could handle. Emily referred me to several lawyers, and after meeting with 3, I chose Daniel Harper, who had a strong record in cases of familial financial abuse. His retainer was $8,000, nearly wiping out my emergency savings, which I'd meticulously built over years of frugal living. "Laura," Daniel said at our first meeting, "their case has no legal legs. They can't force you to pay a loan you didn't consent to, especially one secured through forgery." "That's good, right?" I asked, grasping for hope. "Yes and no," he replied. "We'll likely win, but it could be a long, expensive process. Their strategy is to wear you down financially and emotionally until you cave." Daniel helped me file a detailed response to the complaint, denying their claims and countersuing for harassment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and defamation based on the lies my family spread about me online and to my employer. We also filed a motion to dismiss the case, arguing it lacked any legal basis. But as Daniel warned, the legal system was slow. The judge, Patricia Coleman, scheduled a hearing for the motion 3 months out. In the meantime, my life continued to fray. The lender's fraud investigation dragged on, but they confirmed the loan was still in my name, already dinging my credit score and blocking me from major financial moves. Ethan had moved into the condo, posting smug photos on social media with captions like "living the dream" and "grateful for family who make it happen." Each post felt like a deliberate jab. The financial strain grew unbearable. Between Daniel's retainer, ongoing legal fees, and time off work for meetings and depositions, my savings dwindled. I canceled a long-planned trip to Colorado, paused my retirement contributions, and started using credit cards for groceries, a habit I'd avoided since my broke post-college days. The emotional toll was worse. I lost 8 pounds in weeks, unable to eat. Stress caused my hair to thin noticeably. I woke up gasping from panic attacks, convinced I was buried under debts I didn't owe. My remaining friends tried to help, but didn't fully grasp the situation. "Can't you just talk it out with them?" one asked. "They're your family." Another said, "Maybe you could help Ethan if it's not too much." Family's forever, right? These comments, though well-meaning, deepened my sense of isolation. No one understood the betrayal. The way my parents had weaponized my financial discipline against me, committed crimes in my name, and were now trying to strong-arm me into funding Ethan's lifestyle. I started seeing a therapist to manage the anxiety, but even she seemed to miss the point. Sometimes in family disputes, preserving relationships means compromising, she said. What would it mean to maintain those ties, even at a cost? I stopped seeing her after that. I wasn't interested in sacrificing my well-being to appease a toxic family dynamic. 2 months into the lawsuit, my parents' attorney offered a settlement. I'd cover the loan payments for 4 years, after which the condo would be refinanced in Ethan's name, if he qualified, and they'd drop the lawsuit. Daniel presented the offer neutrally, asking what I wanted. Sitting in his office, staring at the document, I felt torn. Part of me, the exhausted, broke, emotionally shattered part, wanted to accept just to end the ordeal. 4 years of payments would hurt, but I could rebuild eventually. But then I realized what agreeing would mean, validating their tactics. It would mean admitting that forging my signature, stealing my identity, and suing me was a winning strategy. It would mean signing up for years of their control. "No," I said, my voice steady for the first time in weeks. "I won't settle. Not for 4 years. Not for 4 months. Not for 4 days. What they did was wrong, and I won't let them get away with it." Daniel gave a small nod, a flicker of respect in his eyes. "I'll draft the rejection. And Laura, I think you're doing the right thing." The night before the motion to dismiss hearing, I hit my lowest point. Alone in my apartment, surrounded by legal papers, unpaid bills, and a half-eaten sandwich I couldn't stomach. I broke down. I sobbed until my chest ached, deep, wrenching cries for the girl who'd worked so hard to please her parents, for the young woman who'd clawed her way through college alone, for the adult whose hard-earned stability was now under attack by the people who should have been proudest of her. But as the tears faded, something shifted. The grief remained, but a fierce determination grew alongside it. I wouldn't let them break me. Whatever happened in court, I'd face it with the same resilience that had carried me through every challenge. I texted Daniel, "I'm ready for tomorrow, whatever it takes." His reply was swift, "Get some sleep. I'll see you at the courthouse at 8 a.m. You're tougher than you realize." For the first time in months, I slept without nightmares. The Cook County Courthouse was a towering brick building that seemed designed to overwhelm. I arrived at 7:45 a.m. in a sharp gray blazer and skirt, trying to project confidence. Daniel met me outside, briefcase in hand, his calm demeanor steadying me. "Judge Coleman is fair, but no nonsense," he said as we passed through security. "She values facts over emotional pleas. Let me handle the talking unless she addresses you directly." We were ushered into courtroom 3C, where other cases were slated before ours. Across the gallery, I saw my parents and Ethan, dressed in polished, subdued clothing that screamed upstanding family. My mother held a tissue, poised for dramatic effect. My father sat stiffly, his face set in the stern expression I'd known since childhood, signaling he expected obedience. Ethan avoided my gaze, but I caught a sharp, resentful glance when he thought I wasn't looking. Their attorney, Gregory Walsh, was a gray-haired man in a tailored suit, radiating self-assured arrogance. He gave Daniel a brief nod, but ignored me entirely. At 9 a.m. sharp, the bailiff called the court to order, and Judge Patricia Coleman entered. She was a Latina woman in her early 60s, with short, silver-streaked hair and sharp eyes framed by wire-rimmed glasses. She handled the earlier cases with efficiency, giving each her full focus before moving on. At 10:30 a.m., the bailiff announced Bennett and Bennett vs. Bennett. My stomach twisted as Daniel and I approached the defendant's table, while my parents and Walsh took their places at the plaintiff's side. "We are here on the defendant's motion to dismiss," Judge Coleman said, reviewing the file. "I've read the complaint, response, and all submitted documents. Attorney Harper, as the moving party, you may begin." Daniel stood, adjusting his tie. "Thank you, Your Honor. This case must be dismissed with prejudice because it lacks any valid legal claim. The plaintiffs, Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, are attempting to enforce a non-existent verbal agreement that their daughter, my client Laura Bennett, would pay for a loan for a condo purchased for their son, Ethan Bennett. He systematically dismantled their claims, noting there was no evidence of any agreement, that verbal contracts for real estate are unenforceable under Illinois's statute of frauds, and that my parents had admitted in writing to forging my signature on loan documents, a federal offense. "Moreover, Your Honor," Daniel continued, "we've filed counterclaims for harassment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and defamation due to the plaintiff's public false statements and the damage to Ms. Bennett's credit and financial standing caused by this fraudulent loan." Judge Coleman listened closely, jotting notes. When Daniel finished, she turned to Walsh. "Counsel for the plaintiffs, your response." Walsh rose with theatrical confidence. "Your Honor, this case is about family duties and implied obligations within the unique context of familial bonds. The Bennetts raised Laura, supported her ambitions, and fostered her successful career. In return, there was an understanding that she'd assist her brother, who's faced greater challenges, when he needed help. I clenched my jaw to stay silent, knowing my parents had contributed nothing to my education, and that any understanding was their fabrication. Daniel had coached me to keep a neutral face, but it took everything I had. Walsh pressed on, his tone almost mournful. The Bennetts acted as agents for their daughter in securing this loan, believing in good faith that she'd agreed to help Ethan achieve the dream of homeownership. Only after the purchase did Ms. Bennett back out, leaving her parents no choice but to seek legal recourse. Judge Coleman's face remained impassive, but her next question carried a hint of doubt. "Counselor, are you suggesting parents have a legal right to forge their adult child's signature on loan documents based on an assumed family obligation?" Walsh hesitated. Not precisely, Your Honor, but within this family's dynamic. Let's be clear, Judge Coleman cut in. The complaint acknowledges Ms. Bennett's signature was applied without her presence. Are the plaintiffs denying this occurred? They're not denying the signature issue, Walsh conceded, but they believed they had implied authority based on prior family financial arrangements. Judge Coleman's brow arched. I'd like to hear from the plaintiffs directly. Mr. Bennett, please take the stand. My father approached the witness stand and was sworn in. His testimony was a polished blend of lies and manipulation. Your Honor, we've always been a tight-knit family that supports each other, he said, his tone warm and fatherly. When Laura thrived in her career, we were so proud. We assumed, based on our family values, she'd want to help Ethan, who's had a tougher path. Did you explicitly ask Ms. Bennett if she'd take on a $420,000 loan for her brother before signing these documents? Judge Coleman asked. Not in those exact terms, my father hedged. But we've had many talks over the years about Ethan's housing struggles and Laura's role as the successful sibling to pitch in. So, no, Judge Coleman said flatly. You didn't ask, and she didn't agree. It was understood, my father insisted. Mr. Bennett, you're under oath, Judge Coleman said, her voice firm. Did you or did you not forge your daughter's signature on these loan documents? My father squirmed. I wouldn't call it forgery, Your Honor. My wife signed for Laura because we truly believed she'd want to help Ethan. Judge Coleman's expression tightened. Signing someone's name without their explicit consent is forgery, whether it's your daughter or a stranger. My mother was next, delivering a tearful performance about how I'd abandoned my family duties and how they'd acted out of desperation for Ethan's future. Ethan followed, casting himself as the victim of my financial cruelty and selfish success. Throughout, Daniel lodged objections when their statements strayed into hearsay or baseless claims, most of which Judge Coleman upheld. When it was my turn, I took a deep breath and focused on the facts. I explained how I'd funded my own college education, built my financial stability through years of sacrifice, and never agreed to take on a loan for Ethan. Ms. Bennett, Judge Coleman asked, have there been other instances where your parents made financial decisions for you without your consent? Yes, Your Honor, I said, detailing past incidents. Credit card applications in my name, a car loan I hadn't approved, tax filings done without my input. Each time I confronted them, they brushed it off, saying it was just family helping family, and that I was too rigid about money. During cross-examination, Walsh tried to paint me as heartless, asking questions like, Isn't it true you've always prioritized your own finances over your brother's struggles? And would helping your brother really have been such a burden, given your success? Daniel objected to most as argumentative, and Judge Coleman sustained them, occasionally directing Walsh to focus on relevant issues. The most damning evidence came in the hearing's final phase, when Daniel presented text messages and emails between my parents, uncovered during discovery. In one, my father wrote to my mother, Laura won't agree if we ask outright. Better to go ahead and make it a done deal. She's too stubborn for her own good. My mother replied, Once the papers are signed and Ethan's settled, what can she do? She won't let her brother end up on the street, no matter how much she gripes. These messages exposed their calculated intent, directly contradicting their claims of implied authority and family understanding. As the hearing wrapped up, Judge Coleman looked at us over her glasses. "I'll take this under advisement and issue a ruling within 14 days. But let me be clear. Family ties, no matter how strong, do not supersede legal principles of consent, contracts, or identity theft. Court is adjourned." As we gathered our papers, I felt a mix of exhaustion and cautious hope. The truth was out, laid bare in a way my family couldn't twist. Whatever the ruling, I'd stood my ground, and that alone was a victory. As we left the courtroom, I caught my mother's gaze. For a split second, I thought I saw a shadow of doubt, perhaps even guilt in her eyes, but it vanished, replaced by the familiar glare of self-righteous anger as she turned away. "You did great in there," Daniel said as we stepped out of the courthouse. Judge Coleman seemed persuaded by our case, especially those texts. But family disputes like this rarely feel like a clean win. "Are you ready for that?" I nodded, a quiet resolve settling in. I realized something today. This was never about the money. It was about respect, or their lack of it. They've never seen me as an adult with the right to my own choices. And now? Now, Daniel prompted. Now I need to respect myself enough to hold that line, no matter what the judge rules. As we parted on the courthouse steps, a surprising calm washed over me. The ruling was still uncertain, but I'd spoken my truth to the court, my family, and myself. That was a victory no one could take away. 8 days later, I was in a team meeting at work when my phone vibrated with a text from Daniel. "Ruling's in. Call me ASAP." My pulse raced as I slipped into the hallway and dialed. He picked up immediately. "Judge Coleman dismissed the case with prejudice," he said without preamble. "She also granted our motion for sanctions against your parents and their attorney for filing a baseless lawsuit." I slumped against the wall, my legs unsteady. "What does that mean?" "A few things," Daniel explained. "First, the case is over. They can't refile or bring these claims again. Second, they're ordered to pay $12,000 of your legal fees as a penalty for misusing the court system. And third, the judge included sharp remarks about their conduct, which could matter if the lender or prosecutors pursue the fraud issue." I closed my eyes, relief flooding through me. How much will the $12,000 cover? Not everything, but it'll help significantly. There's more, Daniel continued. The judge issued a 90-day temporary restraining order, barring your parents and Ethan from contacting you directly, citing their pattern of harassment. She saw enough in the evidence to act on her own. I hadn't requested a restraining order at the hearing, though Emily had mentioned it months ago. Judge Coleman had clearly deemed it necessary. One last thing, Daniel added. The judge referred the case to the state's attorney's office for a potential criminal investigation into the loan fraud. That doesn't guarantee charges. It's up to the state. But it's now a possibility. This news hit with mixed emotions. Part of me felt validated that the court recognized the gravity of my parents' actions, but another part flinched at the idea of them facing jail time. "What about the condo and the loan?" I asked. "The judge ordered the lender be notified of her findings, which should clear your fraud claim. The condo itself is now an issue between your parents, Ethan, and the lender. Legally, you're fully detached from it." After hanging up, I sat on the office stairwell, grappling with a swirl of relief, vindication, sorrow, and lingering anger. I'd won decisively, but the victory felt hollow, nothing like I'd imagined. Word of the ruling spread fast. By evening, A local news site, the Chicago Tribune Online, ran a story headlined, "Judge rules against parents who forged daughter's signature on loan." The article was concise but factual, citing court records and including a quote from Daniel about the importance of financial boundaries, even in families. I turned off my phone that night, bracing for the inevitable fallout. When I powered it on the next morning, I had 38 missed calls, over 80 texts, and a flood of social media alerts. Some were from reporters seeking quotes. Many were from extended family, some shocked and supportive, others berating me for airing family drama in court. A few came from old friends who'd initially backed Ethan, but now tried to reconnect with clumsy apologies. The most jarring was a voicemail from Ethan, left at 1:47 a.m., his voice slurred with alcohol. "Happy now, Laura?" Mom's had a breakdown. Dad's talking about selling the house to cover this. And I've got 30 days to leave the condo because the bank's foreclosing. You've ruined us. I always knew you were selfish. But this. Hope your money's worth it, because you've got no family left. I listened once, then deleted it, refusing to let his words take root. The condo's fate was the result of my parents' choices, not mine. I couldn't control how they spun the narrative, or whether they'd ever own their actions. 2 days after the ruling, I got an unexpected email from my Aunt Clara, my mother's sister, who'd cut ties with the family years ago for reasons I'd never fully understood. "Laura," she wrote, "I've read about the lawsuit and your parents' actions. I'm proud of you for standing up to them. They pulled similar stunts with me in the 80s. Smaller scale, but the same playbook. This runs deep in our family. I'm sorry you faced this alone. If you want to talk, I'm here." Her words were a revelation. This wasn't just about me or Ethan. It was a generational pattern of financial manipulation, masked as family support. Knowing Clara had broken free and built a life on her terms gave me a quiet sense of hope. A week later, the lender closed their fraud investigation, sending official documents confirming my name was removed from all records tied to the condo, and that my credit report would be corrected. They were pursuing their own legal action against my parents, but assured me I was fully cleared. The media buzz fizzled quickly. My story was notable enough for local coverage, but not gripping enough to linger. Within days, it was buried under fresher headlines. The personal fallout, though, lingered. Family members who'd condemned me began reaching out after reading the ruling, offering tepid support that felt empty after their earlier silence. I replied courteously, but kept my distance, knowing trust would take time, if it ever returned. Ethan's social media shifted dramatically. The boastful condo photos vanished, replaced by cryptic posts about resilience and cutting out toxicity. He never named me or the lawsuit, but his veiled jabs were obvious to anyone in the know. Mutual contacts said he'd moved back to my parents' basement while they negotiated with the lender to avoid foreclosure. The Evanston condo sat vacant, a stark symbol of their choice's consequences. My father tried contacting me once, about 3 weeks post-ruling, using a new number to dodge my blocks. His voicemail was curt. "Laura, this has gone far enough. We need to sit down as a family and fix this. Call me." I didn't respond. The most surprising development came 5 weeks after the ruling, when I received a letter from the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. After reviewing Judge Coleman's referral, they'd opted not to pursue criminal charges against my parents, citing my reluctance to press charges and the civil remedies already imposed. The letter noted the case could be reopened if new evidence emerged, or if I reconsidered criminal proceedings. I felt a profound relief at this news. While I'd needed to protect myself legally and financially, I'd never wanted my parents to face prison. The civil ruling had achieved what I sought: a complete separation from the fraudulent loan and official acknowledgement of their wrongdoing. As the dust settled, I turned to rebuilding my financial stability. The $12,000 in awarded legal fees offset some costs, though I'd still spent far more defending myself. I crafted a lean budget, began restoring my emergency fund, and resumed retirement contributions. More crucially, I focused on my emotional recovery. I found a new therapist, Dr. Carla Ruiz, who specialized in family estrangement and financial abuse. She affirmed my experience without pressuring me to reconcile, helping me process the betrayal and rebuild my sense of self. 5 months after the ruling, a small package arrived at my apartment. Inside was a carved wooden music box I recognized from my childhood, a gift from my grandfather George that had stayed at my parents' house. A note in his shaky handwriting read, "This is yours. Love always, Grandpa." I called him that night, and he opened up about his own strained history with my parents. "Your mom always played favorites," he said softly. "She did it with her siblings, too. I should have done more to shield you when you were young, but I see clearly now." That conversation sparked a new bond with Grandpa George, rooted in honesty and mutual respect, free from the toxic dynamics that had defined my immediate family. By the 6-month mark, I noticed a shift. Despite the lawsuit's toll, financially and emotionally, I felt unburdened. The constant dread of the next family demand had vanished. The exhausting quest for approval that was never coming had ended. For the first time, I was truly independent, not just financially, but emotionally. The media coverage had long faded, but occasionally I'd receive messages from strangers who'd heard about my case through support groups or legal networks. "Your story gave me the courage to confront my own family's financial manipulation," one man wrote. "Thank you for showing it's possible to break free." These notes reminded me that my fight wasn't just about a loan. It was about dismantling the myth that family can justify financial exploitation, a trap that ensnares so many in cycles of abuse disguised as care. I never heard directly from my parents again. Through family gossip, I learned they'd filed for bankruptcy and moved to a smaller home. Ethan had reportedly landed a job as a receptionist and was getting his act together, though details varied by source. I wished them well from afar, but had no desire to reconnect. Some relationships are better left behind, their absence healthier than their presence. One chilly fall morning, 7 months after the ruling, I was at a cafe with Sarah, the legal assistant who'd first guided me through the crisis. Over coffee, she asked, "Do you ever regret it?" Standing your ground, given what it cost? I watched the steam curl from my mug, thinking. "No," I said at last. "It cost me money, emotions, relationships I thought mattered. But it gave me something priceless. Knowing I can protect myself, that my boundaries are real, and that I don't have to destroy myself to prop others up." Sarah nodded, a knowing look in her eyes. "That's worth more than a condo in Evanston." "Exactly," I said, smiling. "It's the bedrock for something better." A year after Judge Coleman's ruling, I sat in a cozy Chicago cafe with a young woman named Mia, who reminded me starkly of myself a year prior. She gripped a folder of credit card statements, her face etched with worry. "My parents opened accounts in my name," she said, voice shaking. "They say I owe them for raising me, but I'm drowning in my own debt and can barely afford rent." I'd met Mia through an online support group for survivors of family financial abuse, which I'd joined 6 months earlier and later began moderating. This was our first in-person meeting. "You're not alone," I told her gently. "What they're doing isn't normal or okay, no matter how they justify it." As I guided her through steps, credit freezes, fraud reports, legal options, I marveled at how far I'd come. The lawsuit's aftermath had been grueling. Despite the legal win, I'd grappled with deep grief, not just for the family I'd lost, but for the family I'd never truly had. The idealized image of my parents and Ethan I'd clung to had shattered, forcing me to face their view of me as a tool, not a person with my own needs. For months, I'd swung between numbness and raw emotion. I'd function on autopilot, work, eat, sleep, only to be blindsided by rage or sorrow, triggered by a family photo on a coworker's desk, a holiday commercial, or a casual mention of someone's parents. Dr. Ruiz had been a lifeline. "You're not just mourning the loss of your family as it was," she'd said in a tough session. "You're grieving the fantasy of what it could have been, and the childhood you deserved but didn't get." This perspective gave me space to honor my loss, while seeing that what I'd lost was largely a mirage, a story I'd told myself to cope with my family's dysfunction. Therapy also helped me unravel the guilt, obligation, and warped responsibility my parents had instilled. I saw how they'd groomed me to prioritize Ethan's needs over my own, framing my boundaries as a tax on family unity. "Financial abuse cuts deep," Dr. Ruiz explained, "because money ties to survival, security, and often love. When someone manipulates your finances, they're attacking your sense of safety." This reframed my ordeal, not as a money dispute, but as a vital act of self-preservation against people who'd shown they didn't value my well-being. Alongside this emotional work, I rebuilt my life practically. 5 months post-lawsuit, I earned a promotion to data analytics manager, with a significant pay raise. The irony wasn't lost on me. My professional skills in analyzing systems had helped me spot and fight the financial abuse at home. I also moved from my studio to a bright 2-bedroom condo, bought with a mortgage I chose deliberately, a symbol of empowerment, not entrapment. The 2nd bedroom doubled as an office and guest space, reflecting my career growth and openness to healthier connections. My social circle evolved too. Some friends fell away, unable to grasp my harshness toward my family, or uneasy with the messiness of estrangement. But others deepened. Sarah, who'd connected me with legal help, became a close confidant. My coworker Alex, who'd covered for me during court absences without judgment, went from colleague to true friend. Most unexpectedly, I grew close to my Aunt Clara. Our initial email exchange led to regular calls and visits. Through her, I learned more about my family's history of financial manipulation, which helped me see my experience as part of a larger pattern, not a personal failing. Through Aunt Clara, I gained perspective on the generational patterns of financial manipulation in my mother's family. It helped me see that my experience wasn't a personal attack, but a toxic cycle my parents had perpetuated. "Your grandfather pulled the same tricks on your mom that she tried with you," Clara said during a long phone call. "The difference is, your mom gave in, joined the pattern, and then passed it on. You broke that cycle." Reframing my story as breaking a cycle, not a family, was pivotal to my healing. It shifted my perspective from failing to keep family peace to bravely refusing to continue dysfunction. Another source of healing came from the online support group where I met Mia. What started as a place to swap practical advice grew into a community offering the unconditional support my biological family had withheld. In that space, I found my voice as an advocate. I began sharing my story, first anonymously in the group, then on a blog under my name, and later at local financial empowerment seminars. Each time I told it, the pain lost a bit of its grip, and my words gained power to inspire others. "Your story prompted me to check my credit," one group member messaged. "I found 2 loans I didn't open. I wouldn't have looked without you." Notes like these showed me that my struggle could create meaning, offering a safe space for others facing similar betrayals. Around the 1-year anniversary of the lawsuit, I received an unexpected email from Ethan. Unlike his earlier messages, dripping with blame and entitlement, this one was hesitant and reflective. "I've been thinking a lot," he wrote. "I don't fully get everything that happened or agree with all you did, but I'm starting to notice how Mom and Dad handle things with me, and it's made me think about what you tried to say. I'm seeing a counselor now. I don't expect a reply, but I wanted you to know." I wrestled with whether to respond, discussing it with Dr. Ruiz. After days of reflection, I sent a short, kind, but firm reply, acknowledging his message, wishing him well in therapy, but not inviting immediate reconnection. Any healing between Ethan and me would need time, personal growth, and a fundamental shift in dynamics, not a quick fix over deep wounds. I had no further direct contact with my parents. Through distant relatives, I heard they'd moved to a modest apartment after bankruptcy, and my father had postponed retirement. I took no pleasure in their struggles, but recognized them as the natural outcomes of their actions, not my doing. My financial recovery was slower but steady. The legal fees had drained my savings, but my promotion's salary boost let me rebuild my emergency fund in 8 months. I worked with a financial planner to fortify my protections: identity theft monitoring, periodic credit freezes, and a detailed estate plan clarifying my wishes if I were incapacitated. "You've turned financial trauma into empowerment," my planner remarked during a review. "That's rare and powerful." Sitting across from Mia in that Chicago cafe, I saw the same mix of fear, resolve, and hope that had driven me. As she asked questions and jotted notes, her demeanor shifted from defeated to determined. "What if they never forgive me?" she asked, voicing the question that once consumed me. "That's the toughest part," I admitted, but I realized I was asking the wrong question. It's not about whether they forgive you for protecting yourself. It's about whether you'll forgive yourself if you don't. Mia nodded, a flicker of realization in her eyes. "I think I need to take some steps," she said, gathering her papers with newfound resolve. As we parted, I gave her my contact information. "Whatever you choose, you're not alone. The group's there, and so am I." Walking back to my condo, I reflected on the painful, transformative journey of the past 2 years. The family I'd spent 34 years trying to please was gone, and that loss still stung in quiet moments. But in its place, I'd gained an unshakable trust in my instincts, a chosen family built on respect, and the certainty that I could defend my boundaries, even against those I'd been taught to prioritize above all else. The lawsuit my parents had meant to control me had instead sparked my emancipation from their emotional and financial hold. In trying to force me to fund Ethan's condo, they'd inadvertently pushed me to build something far more enduring. A life of authentic relationships, firm boundaries, and the quiet strength of surviving a crisis and standing tall. As I reached my building, my phone pinged with a message from the support group moderators. A new member had joined, sharing a story eerily similar to mine and Mia's. Pausing at my doorstep, I typed a warm, welcome message. The cycle of financial exploitation that had scarred so many families might never fully end, but each person who found the courage to say no more chipped away at its grip on future generations. That was perhaps the deepest lesson of my journey. Sometimes, the most meaningful legacy isn't money or material help, but the example of healthy boundaries and the bravery to uphold them, no matter the cost. Have you ever faced tough financial boundaries with family? I'd love to hear your thoughts below. If my story struck a chord, please like and follow for more real-life tales of navigating complex family dynamics. Protecting your financial well-being isn't selfish. It's vital self-care. Thanks for reading, and I hope my journey inspires you to honor your own boundaries, whatever they may be.